You've heard of Dune, right? Giant sandworms, Zendaya and Timothée walking the desert in funky spacesuits fighting over spice. Well, welcome to Mount Baldy, our very own real-life version of Dune, minus the celebrities and giant worms. Instead of space drama, we're dealing with something even weirder. A dune that's literally eating people. Mount Baldy rises over Lake Michigan like a giant sandy mountain, looking totally normal. But under all that sand, there's a mystery that's got scientists scratching their heads. It all started on a sunny afternoon back in 2013, when a 6-year-old boy named Nathan was running up the dune. The boy was on vacation with his family and his best friend. They were excited to spend their days swimming in the lake's cold water and soaking in the warm sun. At some point, Nathan and his best friend got tired of swimming and decided to explore the dunes. Their idea of fun was to run up the slopes and then slide it all the way back down. When they were running uphill, Nathan took the lead and saw something weird. A hole. He leaned forward to check it out when the ground literally swallowed him whole. It happened too fast. Nathan was gone before his friend got there. His family freaked out, and for 3 long hours, search teams desperately tried to find him. Don't worry, the guy survived, even though his chances were slim. And since then, scientists have been trying to understand what on earth caused this accident. The weird part here is that dunes like Mount Baldy shouldn't have holes or empty spaces underneath them. Dunes are supposed to be solid piles of sand. For sinkholes to happen, there needs to be running water below ground. This water usually weakens the soil up until the point where the ground breaks beneath the surface and a huge hole opens up. That afternoon that Nathan disappeared, a geologist happened to be passing by and was completely shook by what had happened. Erin Argillen, who tried helping with the rescue, said she never heard of anything like that in her years of studying dunes. She was determined to figure it out though. So, she went back to Mount Baldy and used ground-penetrating radar to scan the dune. That's when she saw the problem was way bigger than expected. Bizarrely enough, there were another 66 hidden holes just waiting to collapse. It was like Mount Baldy was a dune full of invisible traps, and no one had any clue why. Argillen started to speculate what could possibly explain this phenomenon. One clue rests on the history of Mount Baldy. You see, over the years, sand was taken from Mount Baldy for industrial purposes, like making mason jars and other glass products. Some scientists think that removing all that sand disturbed the natural structure of the dune. This disruption could have caused the dune to weaken, making it unstable and creating the weird hollow pockets we're seeing now. But this theory doesn't explain why the sinkholes are only happening now or why they disappear so quickly. These sinkholes sort of look like those old Hollywood movies quicksand. They open up, sometimes swallow something or someone, then they disappear. But real quicksand is not as evil as the ones in the movies. It's a slushy mix of sand and water that looks solid from above, but it collapses into a more liquid form if a heavy object disturbs it. Another theory says it's probably because of fallen trees, buried long ago under layers of sand. These trees could be decaying and leaving behind empty spaces. If the sand shifts just right, it could cause these gaps to collapse, forming sinkholes. The problem with this theory goes back to the disappearing sinkholes. If it were true, the holes would remain open. This next deep hole seems to come out of a totally different Hollywood era. Something like if Jurassic Park met Aquaman. Behold, the famous Sawmill Sink. This wonder of nature is a deep, mysterious blue hole in the Bahamas. Think of it as a giant underwater sinkhole that goes down about 120 feet, filled with fresh and salty water. It's a natural wonder by itself, but also because scientists started to uncover perfectly preserved fossils and ancient bones in it. We're talking extinct species like giant tortoises, crocodiles, and even an ancient rat the size of your backpack. Back in 2004, scientists hit the jackpot when they dove down into the depths of Sawmill Sink and pulled up fossils that have been there for thousands of years. You may think they did not preserve well, but no. The water there is so cold and low on oxygen that everything stayed in tip-top shape, like it had been frozen. The scientists didn't just find long-lost animals, but human remains too. These bones composed a human tibia and sacrum of a Lucayan person, the indigenous folks who lived in the Bahamas about 1,000 years ago. This discovery shocked archaeologists because it gave them a major clue into the lives of the Bahamas' original inhabitants. And speaking of holes, this group of scientists tried digging an insanely deep one just to hear Mother Earth's heartbeat. Hang in there, I'll explain. It started back in 1987, when the Germans decided to dig the KTB borehole in Bavaria. A borehole is a deep hole in the ground used to find oil. These guys managed to dig almost 30,000 feet below the ground. Their mission was to understand more about our planet's inner workings, like tectonic movements, temperature changes, and seismic activity. But as they dug deeper, they were hit with a few surprises. Instead of finding solid, stable rock, they encountered fluids and gas seeping into the hole, which threw off everything they thought they knew. The heat also spiked way faster than expected, making scientists rethink their theories on how temperature behaves deep down. They actually had to stop digging because they reached the insane temperature of 572 Fahrenheit. This whole experiment sparked the interest of a Dutch artist who decided to tag along and do an experiment of her own. She used a geophone, which is an instrument that converts ground movements to voltage, and she recorded sound waves from the hole. When she got the results, she was shocked to hear that the sounds they recorded resembled a distant thunder and almost sounded like a real heartbeat. Okay, so this diamond mine could easily be scouted as a location for some Star Wars sequel, and I'm not even joking. Located way up in the remote wilderness of northern Canada, surrounded by ice, snow, and a lake, sits the Diavik Diamond Mine. Since opening in 2003, Diavik has produced over 100 million carats of high-quality diamonds. But what really makes Diavik special is how it's powered, in part by a wind farm. Yep, they managed to do that even in the cold tundra. When Diavik first opened, it was all about open-pit mining. But now they've moved underground, digging deeper to find those hidden treasures. And to make it all work, they had to build a dike system to stop the lake from flooding the mine. Pretty intense, right? And then there's the Monticello Dam, which sounds pretty Italian, but it's actually located in Napa Valley, California. This beauty was built between 1953 and 1957, and it created Lake Berryessa, which holds the record for the 7th largest man-made lake in California. The lake covers approximately 20,000 acres, which is about as big as Disney World in Florida. And although this lake works as a water reservoir for the northern region of the San Francisco Bay Area, that's not its most important feature. Its most unique feature is known as the Glory Hole. The Glory Hole is a morning glory type spillway which helps to drain the excess water from the dam. It has a diameter of 72 feet at the top, and it can drain an astonishing 48,000 cubic feet of water per second when the lake reaches its maximum capacity. If you thought about swimming around in the lake, forget it. It's pretty fascinating, but it was forbidden since someone swam too close to it in '97 and was swept inside the spillway. Yikes.
Miles of land with no clouds in the sky. A little scorpion digs itself underground to escape the heat. No trees or bushes as far as the eye can see. A desert wasn't always like this. Most of them used to be covered with lush green and thick vegetation. Each desert is unique in its own way. It's defined as an area that receives less than 10 inches of rainfall per year. So, with barely any water to support life, the atmosphere is prone to extreme shifts of temperature. That's why a desert can be scorching hot during the day, but the temperatures drop significantly at night. As soon as the sun sets, all the heat disappears since there's no atmospheric moisture to trap it inside. Jungles and rainforests stay warm at night since the humidity acts as a net trapping the heat. These dry lands are a result of rain shadow. It's part of the weather cycle that creates precipitation. Damp, warm wind blowing from a certain direction hits a mountain and slowly rises up to form clouds. But as it goes higher, it begins to cool, which makes it release moisture. It's technically fog. So, as a result, the other side of the mountain can't retain any humidity. That's how it turns dry and barren. If we look at this on a regional scale, then you'd notice that deserts aren't even located near the mountains. A high-pressure system is when a flow of dry air remains near the surface. They can be found in subtropical or desert places. If the high-pressure system is consistent, then it's not easy for the opposite effect to take place, which causes typical weather patterns. Many deserts aren't even covered in sand. When walking through a desert, you're stepping on millions of years of nature doing its job. When the days are boiling hot and the nights teeth-chattering cold, the rocks tend to break down easily. The dryness and winds cause erosion and contribute to breaking down these rocks, exposing the bedrock underneath. And as time goes on, the rocks get smaller and smaller until the sand is produced. The larger chunks of sand sink to the bottom, while the smaller grain-like pieces remain on top. The wind transfers the sand in multiple directions and on other larger rocks. Over time, the sand constantly rubbing against the rocks will help it erode it until one day that rock will turn into sand. Dunes are the ocean waves of the desert. Sand dunes are unique in that they don't have a consistent shape. One day, you may see a dune sea in front of you, and the next day, it can be gone. Sand almost behaves like water. Try taking some dry sand with one hand and hold a fist. You'll notice the sand leaking out of your control as it spills. Sand is an accumulation of ground-up rocks shaped by the environment, wind, and gravity. Sand dunes can be found wherever there is a large plain of land and wind. So, beaches, deserts, and even abandoned farmlands have them. You can point out certain dunes depending on the vegetation. So, the ones on the beach have different composition and are smaller, but the ones that cover more ground have a flat or rippled surface. In such places, you can find sand sheets that stretch for miles ahead. Sandstorms form closer to the edges of the desert rather than in the middle. With no vegetation to shield and limit the storms, they can get pretty big. The wind starts off slow and then picks up pace, carrying many particles and exposing the ground below. The rest of the particles lying on the ground begin to vibrate. The stronger the wind, the more sand will be in your face. So the particles all bump into each other and carry the rest of them in the air. The sandstorm can be so huge that it blocks out the sun. In 2001, a sandstorm in China moved an estimated 6.5 million tons, covering an area of around 52 million square miles. About 80% of deserts aren't covered with sand, but rather with barren earth. With no plants and rainfall, the sun just bakes the ground as it is and holds everything in place. You can find hills and rock formations in deserts, many of them shaped by erosion. Some deserts have small mountains too, and depending on the geologic elements, the color and hardness of the rock vary. But not any sandy patch of land is a real desert. The common ones are composed mainly of sand. There are some that are classified as pebble deserts, rock deserts, and even snow and ice ones. Cold deserts are found all over the world. The Gobi Desert, the coastal desert of Peru, and northern Chile have those. There is no humidity around these places, so moisture can't be contained to make clouds. The biggest desert in the world is the whole continent of Antarctica. This giant icy wasteland has no rainfall, but dry winds similar to those in hot deserts. Ice and snow cover almost every square inch of the place that's only habitable by scientists and researchers, and a bunch of penguins. In the Sahara Desert, nomadic tribes wander around from place to place. They've been there for thousands of years and only know the desert life. It's estimated that there are only 2.5 million people living there, excluding the Nile Valley. That's one person per square mile. In the past, the Sahara had a lot more people. Evidence of stone artifacts and even art designed on rocks were found in various places, but those places are dried up, uninhabitable areas. Fossils show that the Sahara was once a large network of rivers and lakes, occupied by ancient extinct marine animals. That was millions of years ago. But just around 7,000 years ago, the Sahara was more vibrant with buffaloes, giraffes, elephants, and other animals that are currently found elsewhere in Africa. The people back then used to live near large Saharan lakes and relied on fishing for food. They created settlements around them while defending themselves from animal threats. A lot of those rivers dried up, but many remain as oases. An oasis is an area that has a fresh water source and fertile soil, surrounded by dryness. People of the Sahara grew crops and planted trees for dates around the perimeter to prevent sand from contaminating the water and destroying the crops. Some of the water was brought in through irrigation of larger rivers or natural springs. There were also underground sources of water. The oasis could be as little as only a few date palms around the body of water to an entire city. They were perfect trading routes for merchants and nomads, often dealing dates, olives, figs, and other commodities. The settlers maintained the oasis for generations until now. Despite the oasis, there were still some nomads wandering around, but both settlers and nomads had domesticated livestock. Saharan people are still specialists when it comes to moving around. Many of them are trained blacksmiths or agriculturalists that follow to where they can thrive and prosper. Even though the desert climate and conditions are hostile for living beings, there are plenty of plants and animals that specialize in such conditions. The Adex antelope is a unique creature that's currently endangered. Its coat is unmistakable, and its horns are beautifully designed. Cool desert snakes that slither sideways disguise themselves in the same color as the sand. If the desert was the ocean, then camels would be the boats. Their humps store fat to cool themselves off when it gets too hot. The two-humped camel isn't native to the Middle East or Africa, but Mongolia and northern China. They have 2 rows of eyelashes for protection and can close and open their nostrils at will. No desert is complete without scorpions. They're extremely common in the Sahara and can grow to the size of your palm. Let's not forget the animals of the frozen deserts. Penguins are common in the Antarctic, as well as the Arctic fox and polar bears. Deserts don't technically grow in size just because sand spreads further. It works when the ecosystem takes over another land by decreasing vegetation and removing the fertile soil, and then you have more desert.
Millions of years ago, there were seas and oceans where deserts are today. What if it all comes back? Water instead of sand, where deserts used to be. Life on the planet would change completely. Sand can act like a liquid if a strong enough airflow makes it rise from below. The air reduces friction between sand particles, making more space. The particles begin to move freely, as if they're in a liquid. If a huge vent suddenly opened under the Earth's crust, blowing air from beneath, then perhaps the entire landscape would begin to sink like being in quicksand. Such monuments as the Egyptian pyramids or the Sphinx would sink under the ground. Huge cities built on sand would disappear. The Sahara Desert would resemble one bubbling cauldron. Camel caravans would simply fall down. But don't worry, the animals wouldn't get hurt. Liquid sand is filled with oxygen, so they'd be able to swim in it. But what if sand turned into water instead of just a liquid version of itself? If this happened quickly and unexpectedly, then disasters would occur on all the beaches of the world. Imagine you're sunbathing on an air mattress on a sandy beach of a seaside resort. You're wearing sunglasses, the sea waves are tickling your heels, gulls are squawking overhead, and you have iced tea in your hands. A perfect holiday. But then, you feel your mattress moving. A wave hits you. You take off your glasses and find yourself in the middle of the sea. The entire beach has turned into water. It reaches way up to the road where cars drive and houses stand. You help people who were sunbathing nearby to climb on the mattress. You swim to the new shore, head home, turn on the TV, and see this is happening all over the world. Hundreds of thousands of beaches are flooded. Water overflows city streets and houses. People are scared. Some leave their homes, while others take surfboards and ride the waves. And while part of the world is trying to cope with a global flood of sandy shores, a fifth ocean is being formed at the same time. You get on a plane and fly over the largest sandy desert on the planet. The area of the Sahara Desert is 3.5 million square miles. This is almost the area of the entire USA. Billions of tons of sand turned into water in an instant, and all this water starts to spill over. Animals living in the sand, such as jerboa, scorpions, cobras, and many others, disappear from the face of the planet. The nearest countries are devastated by the flood. The new ocean connects to the Mediterranean, Red, and Tyrrhenian seas. The water level in the world's oceans is rising so much that most island countries have to evacuate to continents. In coastal cities, people sit in cafes and enjoy life. Some are sunbathing, while others try to escape from the heat in the shade. Suddenly, the wind rises and a shadow appears on the ground. People look at it, puzzled, and it keeps growing. Everyone looks up and sees that a huge tsunami is approaching the shore. Desert countries have it even worse. They're flooded at once and turn into many small divided islands, and huge waves will hit the shores of port towns for a long time. The hottest places on the planet have become wet. Hot sands turned into almost boiling water. It quickly evaporates and forms huge rain clouds. Thanks to high humidity, the air pressure changes and strong winds begin to blow. They drive clouds all over the planet. Long rains begin all over the world, drenching everything. Water mixes with the world's oceans and cools down. The hottest places in the world are getting colder. With temperatures changing, tornadoes and hurricanes form in different parts of the world and ravage the planet. The face of the whole Earth is warping. New seas, lakes, and rivers form all over the world. Before, water comprised 70% of the planet's surface. Now, it's 90%. Fortunately, cataclysms don't last long. Even though sands cover a lot of land, they're not very thick. The depth of the ocean is hundreds of times deeper than the depth of sand in a desert. In some, the sand is only a few inches thick. Only the largest dunes may reach 150 feet in thickness. The water levels will rise drastically and will probably never return to what they used to be. But at least the weather will calm down sooner or later. But something bad is still going to happen. Every year, 2 billion tons of dust rise into the air. Most of it comes from deserts. Particles of this dust contain useful elements and bacteria. The wind carries them all over the planet. A quarter of this dust comes to rest in seas and oceans. Bacteria and nutrients feed small creatures in the ocean, such as phytoplankton or krill. These creatures, in their turn, are food for small fish and even whales. And the fish are food for predators, as well as for many land animals. So, if sands turn into water, the ocean will lose a lot of its nutrients. The good news is that it won't last long either. Nutrients and bacteria will adapt to the new conditions and will be able to evaporate with water, which condenses into rain clouds. The largest variety of the marine world lives in shallow waters not far from the coast. The desert turned into water gives ideal conditions for new life to develop. New species of animals appear that can survive in hot water. Many creatures that lived in hot sands have now adapted to marine life. Camels have learned to swim, and small reptiles can hold their breath underwater for a long time. Thanks to hot weather and shallowness, a huge amount of seaweed grows on the bottom that can withstand high temperatures. The new ocean now resembles a multicolored garden of marine plants. People are also trying to adapt. They build towns on massive wooden structures right on the water and attach them to the bottom with long chains. Fishing has become the main source of food for all humankind. Cars have become obsolete. Everyone wants boats. Famous expensive car brands now design luxury yachts and ships. Also, everyone learns to swim, and every resident of sea cities is an excellent swimmer. All the new water was fresh until it mixed with the sea and gained its saltiness. People have created special filters that turn this water fresh. Global stocks are increasing. There are almost no places left in the world where people don't have enough water. But what if our situation became stranger still, and all the sand on the planet, not only on beaches and in deserts, turned into liquid? All hourglasses in the world would accelerate because the water flows much faster than sand. Sand is also used for all types of construction works. They use it in the production of concrete and to lay a strong foundation. it would be impossible to create bricks and clay without sand. Almost all houses, not counting wooden ones, would simply fall apart. But wooden houses could just rot because of the high humidity levels. Sand is used for glass. Production of mirrors, windows, and light bulbs would be greatly reduced. World reserves of drinking water would decrease as sand is a natural filter for purification. There would be huge traffic jams on the roads because, well, there would be no roads to speak of. Imagine you're driving a car and its wheels turn into jelly. Road vehicles would be severely affected. Planes would also stop flying because sand is used in the construction of the runway. The only means of transportation left would be ships. Sand is present almost everywhere on our planet, so the water would begin to moisten and wash away the soil. The whole world would turn into a vicious marsh, and it would be very difficult to move around. The humidity levels would increase significantly, and thick fogs would appear every day. A huge number of scolopendras, salamanders, frogs, and other creatures that love humidity would take over the planet. Some insects may evolve and increase in size thanks to the new ideal conditions. And people, if they survive at all, might grow scales to better transfer moisture. The Earth would look like a planet from a sci-fi movie. But fortunately, this isn't going to ever happen.
Octopuses have 3 hearts. 2 of them pump blood to the gills, while the bigger heart circulates blood to the rest of their body. They also have 9 brains. There's the large central one, but also each of their 8 arms has a mini brain of its own, which is why they can act independently. Since each arm has its own brain, the central brain only needs to send a higher level signal to the arm. Things like, move to that nearby crevice, there might be a crab hiding inside. In the case of humans, the brain would guide and take control of each movement of our legs and arms. And with an octopus, arms act almost independently on their way to the crevice. It also tastes and feels with the suction cups on it. Since their arms are so independent, an octopus doesn't actually know where they are unless it sees them. The human body has an ability called proprioception. Thanks to it, we know where our arm is, even if we hold it, let's say, behind our back. 1816 is known as the year when summer didn't come. In April 1815, there was a massive explosion on Mount Tambora in Indonesia. It sent enormous clouds of volcanic ash up into the atmosphere. The majority of the northern hemisphere got covered with a shroud of dust and dirt and kind of refused to settle. In June of the following year, the cold winter didn't just come to an end. Frost damaged crops, and snow and rain persisted during the whole summer. In Iceland, you'll find some of the most breathtaking sceneries on our planet. Jagged mountains, fjords, hot geysers, ice fields carved into the landscape. Stunning yet intriguingly black sand beaches, such as Reynisfjara Beach. Most of the sand on beaches is generally formed from rocks that have broken down because of weather changes and erosion through thousands or even millions of years. And on Reynisfjara, the sand is a striking black color, and that's because of volcanic activity. Lava came out of an erupting volcano, got to the surface, cooled, and then hardened in the Atlantic Ocean, creating such a fascinating black hue. This beach is so magically stunning, but it's also very dangerous because of its sneakier waves. That's when a few smaller waves join together into a single, really big one. This phenomenon can happen when ocean currents force waves together, or in the case of Reynisfjara, when such waves come from an offshore underground cliff and get an even stronger pulling effect. Considering the ocean's low temperatures too, it's definitely better to just take pictures from a safe spot. Some trees talk to each other, not the way we do, of course, but, for example, acacia trees that grow over the African savanna can warn each other if there's something dangerous coming. When some animals, such as antelopes, gobble up its leaves, the tree immediately starts producing more tannin, which is toxic to animals. They also emit a special type of gas that travels through the air and warns other trees they should protect themselves too. You're stargazing, such a chill night, and then a flash of bright light streaks through the night sky. A shooting star, so cool. But what we see is not actually a star, although we call it that way. They're meteors, which are basically small chunks of dust and rock moving through space. As they're passing through our atmosphere, they cause something called friction when one thing rubs against another, and that's why they glow. Also, the friction causes heat. Dust and rocks get extremely hot as they fly through the atmosphere, and the heat makes them glow until the moment they burn out and turn into what we call the shooting star. Sunsets in deserts are extremely beautiful because of the spectacular colors they produce a bit more than elsewhere. Sunlight consists of various shades of the color spectrum. When the sun is high in the sky, these colors mix together and our eyes see them as white. But as the sun gets lower, its rays have to go through a thicker layer of atmosphere before they get to us. The atmosphere then scatters shorter wavelengths of light, like blue and purple, before we can even see them. That's why the longer orange and red wavelengths stand out. In urban environments, air pollution can make sunset colors duller than everywhere. The clean air in deserts allow the vivid colors coming from the sun to shine through at twilight. Also, the moisture, water vapor, and rain-engorged clouds can mute the sunset's hues. Since there's no rain, clouds are thin and wispy, so they filter and reflect sunlight instead of blocking it. Bamboo grows really fast. It's actually the fastest growing plant on Earth, sometimes growing about 3 feet in just one day. You can find it in dense forests, where only a little light gets to the ground, which means bamboo is under strong pressure to reach the sunlight as quickly as it can. There's an underground stem that connects bamboo shoots to their parent plant, so the shoot doesn't really need leaves of its own until it gets to its full height. Also, bamboo grows faster than other plants because it doesn't waste its time and energy on growing rings that thicken the stalk. It's just a thin, hollow stick that grows straight up. You'll notice some of the big trees have shallow root systems, sometimes even 10 inches deep in the ground. The roots generally need access to oxygen and water, and they can mostly find it in special underground pockets called soil pores. When a tree has ideal moisture and soil conditions, it can send roots deeper down under the surface and get what it needs. But most of the time, conditions are not perfect, considering bedrock, stones, and compact soil that physically prevents the roots from going down. Such obstacles also prevent the roots from getting the needed oxygen. So, when life gets tough, the tree will take an easier option. Its roots will stay close to the surface and spread out in different directions. Drought conditions are another reason trees can have shallow root systems. By staying closer to the surface, they can take most of the rainfall collection. Plants are exposed to the sunlight most of the time, but they still don't get sunburn. They appeared on land about 700 million years ago, and one of the key things they needed to survive was something that would protect them against the ultraviolet rays coming from the sun. Those in the sea had seawater as protection. UV radiation is mostly responsible for sunburn, so land plants developed a special protein that detects it. This protein sends signals to the cells to protect the plant from the damage and effects of UV radiation. Basically, it's like they produce their own natural sunscreen, but this still doesn't mean they're 100% protected. You know that common belief that if you water plants in the midday sunshine, this can cause their sunburn? Some think droplets of water act as tiny lenses and then focus the sunlight onto the leaf surface. But they're not strong enough to actually focus sunlight from a water droplet onto the surface of a leaf. It's just that their natural sunscreen doesn't mean total protection. Too much exposure to UV radiation damages cells in the leaves and bark of the majority of plants. Earth's core is as hot as the surface of the sun. You'd think it could easily melt our entire planet, especially since the core is only 1,800 miles away from the surface. If the sun were so close, we'd be like French fries. But we're alive because the center of the sun is surrounded by a mantle of rock that's mostly solid. The crust we walk on actually floats on that mantle and protects us. If the sun was close, we'd only have empty space to protect us, and you and I wouldn't be talking. Also, to melt the entire planet, you'd need way more energy than the heat in its core. So there.
Once upon a time, a young boy was digging a ginormous hole on the beach. But then, disaster struck! The hole caved in, and he found himself stuck up to his neck in the sand like a human popsicle. Thankfully, his parents were able to keep the sand out of his mouth. Emergency services swooped into the beach soon after. After some effort, the boy was taken out. Experts say sand is tricky and can be super unstable when messed with. So, the moral of the story is, go ahead and have fun on the beach. But if you're planning on digging a hole big enough to fit your entire body, be mindful of the size and location. It turns out that this is not a one-time incident. Making deep holes can lead to serious injuries, or even worse. According to a study, there have been over 50 incidents of sand hole collapses worldwide, with many of them resulting in fatalities. We don't want to be the next headline for a preventable tragedy. So, here are some helpful tips from experts to keep you safe and sound. Never dig a hole deeper than the knee level of the smallest person in your group, and always fill in any hole you make before you leave, day or night. Lastly, avoid digging near the dune line or water line where emergency vehicles travel. Since we started with holes on the beach, we might as well continue with sinkholes. Sinkholes, also known as snake holes or swallow holes, are like chameleons on Earth's surface. They can be big, they can be small, and they can pop up seemingly out of nowhere. It's like playing a game of whack-a-mole, but instead of moles, it's sinkholes. These sneaky things form over the years. They require specific conditions and processes. So, what's the deal with sinkholes? Well, they're basically natural depressions or holes in Earth's surface caused by karst processes. And what are karst processes, you may ask? They occur when bedrocks are soluble. It's as if rocks have a secret weakness, and water is their kryptonite. Now, even though sinkholes form slowly, they're like that one friend who's always full of surprises. They can be unpredictable and show up when you least expect them. Interesting fact time. This giant pit is over 2,165 feet deep. It's the biggest and deepest sinkhole in the world. Some researchers think a meteorite might have caused it, but others believe it formed over the course of 128,000 years as underground rivers eroded the surrounding limestone. Either way, it's pretty mind-boggling. The locals have known about it for ages, but it wasn't until 1994 that the rest of the world learned about it thanks to a group of British explorers. This massive hole is home to over 1,200 plant and animal species, including rare ones like the ginkgo tree and the clouded leopard. A waterfall cascades into the pit in the rainy season, feeding an underground river and cave system below. It's like a whole other world out there. Next, we have hailstorms. Think of them as nature's way of saying, "Heads up!" in the most intense way possible. Hail is like frozen rain on steroids, and when it starts pelting down, you better take cover. Hailstorms typically last for about 15 minutes, but in that short time, they can cause serious damage to buildings, cars, and crops. They can even knock out power lines and bring down trees. And if you're unlucky to be caught out in the open during a hailstorm, you might find yourself feeling like a human pinball. Here are some of the things that make hailstorms a real bummer. Watch out, planes. If you think turbulence is bad, wait until you encounter a hailstorm in the air. A plane crashed during a hailstorm in northern Mexico in 2018. Thankfully, everyone on board made it out safely. Phew! Hail is not just a danger to airplanes, but also to cars on the road. Imagine driving down the highway and then, boom! Your windshield shatters into tiny pieces. You can barely see where you're going, and the road is slippery. Farmers have it rough during a hailstorm too. Those strong winds and giant ice pellets can destroy crops, leaving behind a trail of broken plants and stripped bark. All that hard work goes down the drain in a matter of minutes, leading to significant losses. What if it's summertime? Who doesn't love soaking up the sun, playing in the sand, and catching some waves? Oops, rip currents. Those powerful, narrow channels of fast-moving water are everywhere along the east, Gulf, and west coasts, and the Great Lakes shores. They can move at speeds of up to 8 feet per second. People who panic in rip currents often try to swim straight back to shore, which is the wrong move and could tire you out, or even worse. So, what should you do if you get caught in a rip current? First, stay calm and don't fight it. Instead, swim parallel to the shore and then back to land at an angle. A little clarification. Rip currents and rip tides are not the same thing. Rip tides are a specific type of current that happens when tidal water moves quickly through places like inlets and harbors. Landslides are another type of danger that can catch you off guard. Mountains look like they're stable, rock-solid things that have been around forever. But don't let appearances fool you. Landslides can happen anywhere, at any time. Basically, landslides happen when a big pile of dirt, rocks, and other debris gets all shaken up and starts tumbling down a hill. Sometimes it's because of rain. Sometimes it's because of something like an earthquake. And sometimes it's just because the ground decides it's had enough. Mother Nature's got some more tricks up her sleeve. First up, we've got heat bursts. This weather phenomenon is hotter than a jalapeno. Now, these aren't your everyday thunderstorms. For a heat burst to occur, the atmospheric conditions have to be very specific. We need dry air, high altitude descents, and an absence of evaporated precipitation. When all these factors come together, the result is a heat burst that can reach speeds so fast that you'll feel like you're riding a rocket to the sun. And not only is the air scorching hot, but it's also so dry that it evaporates moisture right out of anything it touches, including poor defenseless vegetation. Have you ever heard of a fire whirl, also known as a fire devil or fire tornado? It's like a swirling vortex of fire and ash that can eat up debris and combustible gases. Think of it as a mini tornado that's fueled by a raging fire. These things usually start with a swirl of wind, which you can see thanks to all the smoke. They happen when rising heat and windy conditions team up to create whirling eddies of air. These eddies can sometimes get so intense that they form a tornado-like vortex that's hungry for anything and everything in its path. Now, sometimes people call a fire whirl by its other names, like firenado, fire swirl, or fire twister. But those terms usually refer to a different thing, where a fire is so intense that it creates an actual tornado. Fire whirls are a little different because their vortex doesn't usually go from the ground all the way up to the clouds. And even if they do, they're not usually considered a classic tornado because they don't form in the same way. These things can get pretty hot too. We're talking up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Fire whirls are more likely to happen during wildfires or firestorms when there's enough wind to create big vortices. The biggest ones can be massive. They can even uproot trees that are 49 feet tall or more. There you have 7 sneaky natural phenomena. Have you ever encountered any of these? Comment below and let us know.
You're wandering across the Sahara Desert, and all you can see around is endless sand. And then, all of a sudden, you spot this mark in the sand. The wisest thing to do is run away from that spot as fast as you can. Because if you squint and focus really well, you'll realize that you're looking at a Saharan horned viper hiding in the sand, waiting for its next meal. Paradoxically, the bite of the snake has never led to human fatalities. But then, why should you run away? Well, let's find out. The Saharan horned viper is one of the desert's most famous snakes and a pro at hiding in plain sight. The Cerastes cerastes, which is this snake's scientific name, is one of the most well-camouflaged creatures in the entire animal kingdom. It can measure between 12 and 24 inches in length on average, but the biggest specimens can stretch up to a whopping 33 inches, nearly 3 feet. And while that might not seem too long, trust me, you wouldn't want one to sneak up on you. Interestingly, the females of this species are larger than the males. which is rare in snakes and gives the females an even more intimidating presence. But the truly unique thing about this viper is, of course, those creepy horns, one above each eye. They give the reptile a dragon-like look, setting it apart from most other desert vipers. Not all Saharan horned vipers have these horns. Some have small nubs or none at all. You could say it's a bit of a genetic lottery. Still, these horns add to the viper's threatening vibe and make it look even more fearsome. But it's not just their horns or size that makes them fascinating. Males and females look different beyond just their size. Males have noticeably larger heads and eyes than females. And compared to their relative, Saharan horned vipers have bigger heads and are more likely to sport these spooky horns. Now, let's talk about what makes the Saharan horned viper a true master of survival: its uncanny ability to blend into the sands. This viper's coloration matches the Sahara's various shades: yellow, pale gray, pinkish, reddish, or light brown. It has an intricate pattern along its back, with dark, semi-rectangular patches that sometimes fuse into crossbars. At the same time, the underbelly is white, and the tail often has a black tip. And it's another trick. Some animals can mistake this feature for a scorpion stinger. This camouflage is the viper's main line of defense and its tool for hunting. The reptile doesn't just slither around in plain view. Instead, it buries itself in the sand. The viper can wiggle its body under the soft desert sand, leaving only its eyes and nostrils visible. Imagine a creature so skilled at hiding that it can lay completely flat and practically disappear, waiting for hours until an unsuspecting mouse or lizard or human wanders by. During the day, the viper also takes shelter under rocks and in burrows left by other animals. Sometimes it even simply hides in the shade of bushes. For a creature that looks so fierce, the Saharan horned viper is surprisingly even-tempered. It won't waste its venom on a threat it can avoid, preferring instead to lie still or try to hide. But when it feels truly threatened, the snake gives a truly dramatic warning. It rubs its coils together, producing a distinctive hissing and crackling sound that lets you know it's ready to strike. And if you ignore that warning, well, this viper's bite is loaded with toxic venom that can be quite dangerous. That's why handling such snakes can be a fatal mistake, as two unlucky handlers in Europe once discovered. Both men were bitten by captive Saharan horned vipers, and the bites caused extreme swelling, blood clotting issues, and even kidney failure. The venom in these bites has special compounds that mess with blood clotting, attack kidneys, and can cause serious internal bleeding. The best treatment for these bites is specific antivenom, but it's clear that the bite of a Saharan horned viper is nothing to take lightly. Now here's another astonishing fact about this reptile. When it does move, the Saharan horned viper doesn't slither in the usual way. Instead, it uses a unique style called sidewinding. Picture the animal lifting a loop of its body, moving that loop forward, and then pulling the rest along behind. This sideways walking lets the snake move across the hot sand without letting its belly touch the ground for too long. In a place as hot as the Sahara, this technique isn't just cool looking, it's essential for survival. While the Saharan horned viper is a champion of desert camouflage, it has some serious competition in the camouflage department. Around the world, there are other snakes that have protected the art of blending into their surroundings to catch prey and avoid being eaten themselves. Like the eastern brown snake, an Australian snake that is one of the most venomous in the world. Its brown color lets it blend in with rocks and soil, making it extremely hard to spot until you're practically on top of it. A bite from the snake can be fatal in less than an hour. Or the eastern copperhead, found in the forests of the U.S. This snake's pale tan and pinkish colors blend in perfectly with autumn leaves. It often freezes in place rather than slithering away, which leads to many accidental bites. Its venom usually isn't fatal, But it's painful, and since the reptile hides so well, encounters are common. The Perengaise adder from Angola and Namibia loves to hide in the sand like the Saharan horned viper. It mostly eats lizards, and its sandy-colored scales make it almost impossible to see. Thankfully, its bite isn't too dangerous for humans. Now look at this terrifying creature. It's the timber rattlesnake. This rattlesnake lives in the lush forests of the U.S. and uses its colors to blend into the forest floor. You might not see it, but if you hear its rattle, take a step back since its venom is potent. The Pacific gopher snake, found on the west coast of the U.S., can grow up to 7 feet long. The only plus in this situation is that this reptile is non-venomous. It camouflages well in forests and fields, but is harmless to people. Just don't scare it, or you'll get a bite, which is still unpleasant. In the rocky terrains of California and Oregon, you might meet the northern Pacific rattlesnake, which likes blending into dark brown and gold rocks. Hearing a rattle is often your only warning, since this dangerous snake is nearby. These neck snakes aren't particularly dangerous, but they're unsurpassed masters of camouflage. The smooth green snake has a bright green color that matches the leaves in trees and grass, which makes it practically invisible among foliage. The common European viper prefers hiding among leaves and shrubs, and the harmless common garter snake has colors that blend in with dirt and grass. Keep in mind, though, that even though all these snakes are not venomous, they can still give a painful nip. Oh, and I can't but mention the massive reticulated python. Even though it can grow over 21 feet, this South Asian snake is expert at hiding among leaves and shadows. It's one of the only snakes known to occasionally hunt humans, so tread carefully in its territory. Now, in the wild, snakes like the Saharan horned viper rely on camouflage to hunt and avoid being hunted. They might be blending into leaves, sand, or rocks, but in any case, these snakes have evolved to stay hidden from predators and prey alike. The desert viper buries itself to stay cool and catch food, while forest snakes blend in to hunt in silence or avoid curious humans. For them all, staying hidden isn't just a matter of survival, it's a huge advantage. So, next time you're out in nature, remember that you might be walking right past a hidden hunter, watching you from the shadows with a quiet, horrifying patience. Have fun out there.
You certainly know the Great Wall of China. But did you know the country just built a second one? This one, though, isn't made of bricks and stones, and it doesn't keep out invaders. Instead, it's made of plants and serves as a last line of defense against something that's been slowly but relentlessly taking over the country: sand. This big barrier surrounds the tricky Taklamakan Desert, located in the northwest part of the country. This area is huge, covering an area of over 130,000 square miles, just a bit smaller than Germany. It has some massive dunes, some towering over 300 feet, which is taller than a 30-story skyscraper. The temperatures are crazy too, with scorching heat in the summer, often going up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's not just the size or the temperature that makes it so fearsome. It's the way it moves. Yep, this is the world's second largest shifting sand desert. 85% of it is made up of dunes that move as they're carried by the wind. The sand is constantly swallowing roads, villages, and farmland in its path. The more adventurous travelers who cross the desert by car or bus can actually see the sand moving across the road. But they also notice something interesting on the horizon: green bushes. Don't mistake it for an oasis, though. That's the new Great Wall, or rather, the Green Wall. A massive project designed to fight desertification and control dust storms. But is this really such a big deal? Absolutely. China has been battling desert expansion for quite some time, as one of the reasons is that they need more space. You see, China is one of the most populous countries in the world, second only to India. And now you might be thinking, okay, but their territory is huge, so there's plenty of space for everyone. Well, technically, yes. After all, we are talking about a country that spans over 3 million square miles, almost as big as all of Europe. Even though China is huge, not all of its land can be used. A big part of the country is covered in arid terrain, places that aren't really suitable for construction and have very few people living there. There are 12 major deserts, which make up nearly 20% of China's territory. And this problem is only getting worse as the wasteland keeps expanding. In the future, deserts could take up as much as 44% of the country. Even the capital, Beijing, is at risk. By the way, the capital is already being constantly hit by severe sandstorms, forcing residents to stay inside to avoid the heavy air pollution. For years, China's deserts have been spreading at a rate of more than 1,300 square miles a year. Take the Ningxia-Hui region in northwestern China, for example. It's surrounded by 3 major deserts and has been battling desertification for over 60 years. And as of 2010, 57% of its land had already been affected. This isn't just an inconvenience. Desertification destroys farmland, crippling food production. It also forces people to abandon their homes after watching their village get buried in sand. Authorities are working hard to relocate these people to safer areas. And for those who choose to stay, life isn't easy. Farming, for example, is becoming more and more difficult. For example, farmers in the town of Tongunawa say that when they were kids, they could dig and find water tables about 6 feet deep. Now, they have to dig about 16 feet just to reach water. And since the soil isn't as soft or fertile as it used to be, they also have to use a lot more fertilizer on their crops. Okay, but why is all of this happening? There's not just one main reason for desertification. It's more like a combination of factors. In China specifically, studies show that about 20% of the blame is due to the planet's rising temperatures. I mean, yes, deserts are already environments that are prone to drought, but the increasing heat makes the dryness even worse. And it's a fact that it rains way less nowadays than it did a half a century ago. So, this climate disruption mainly affects the northeastern and northwestern parts of China. But in areas near the Mu'az Desert in north-central China, there's another factor making the country even more arid. And that's us, humans. The equation is simple. More people, more desertification. Between 1997 and 2008, China's population grew by nearly 100 million people. With more people, they need more food, more space, and more resources. So they start cutting down trees, clearing land for farming, and using up all the natural resources around them. It's like the land is just getting stripped of everything it needs to stay healthy. That's how desertification speeds up. But the desertification problem in China can actually affect your life, even if you're on the other side of the world. Here's the thing. Soil stores a huge amount of carbon. But as the land degrades, not only does it lose the ability to hold on to that carbon, it can actually release it into the atmosphere. And when more carbon goes into the air, well, we all know how that story ends, right? Luckily, there are a few ways to keep China from turning into one giant sandpit. One solution that authorities have come up with is building the green wall we've been talking about in the Taklamakan Desert. By planting a massive amount of trees, shrubs, and other vegetation around the deserts, they're able to prevent sandstorms. The thing is, the wind and sand action at the edge of the desert is super intense, and the sand dunes keep expanding outward. This green belt also helps protect infrastructure. By locking in the desert's edges, it safeguards things like railways and roads. Building such a powerful barrier is a huge engineering feat, The first challenge is obviously the size of the desert that needs to be contained. It's massive. Then there's the height of the dunes, some of which reach crazy heights. The tallest dunes are as high as a skyscraper with 100 floors. On top of that, engineers have come up with solutions to make the greenbelt thrive in the dry climate, which makes reforestation practically impossible. So this is definitely not a project that happens overnight. Just in the Taklamakan Desert alone, it took 40 years to finish the first 1,700 miles of the greenbelt. To finish the rest, they needed a group of 600,000 people planting desert-tolerant species like desert poplar, red willow, and saxaul trees. Speaking of that, even the plants they're using in the project can create economic opportunities. For example, there is the desert hyacinth, also known as the ginseng of the desert. This plant actually thrives in dry environments, and it can be easily sold since it's traditionally used in food in China. Besides the plants, they're also setting up solar power bases around the desert. Installing solar panels there doesn't just generate power, it can also help keep the sand dunes from moving. This huge man-made barrier, which stretches about 2,000 miles around the Taklamakan Desert, was finally completed in November 2024. And it looks like all the hard work from the engineers really paid off. The portion of the country covered by deserts dropped from 27.2% in the previous decade to 26.8%. That's pretty amazing. But where did all that sand go? It's not like it just vanished into thin air. It's more like it's been contained now. The sand that used to move around is not spreading anymore, at least not taking over more land. The battle against desertification is far from over, but one thing is clear. China is no longer just fighting its deserts, it's actually winning. We're flying over the foothills of the Andes and approaching one of the most mysterious archaeological finds in history. Along a rocky ridge in Peru, you may notice something strange. It's like a giant motorcycle has driven along a mountain and left a tire mark. However, the lower you go, the less it looks like a tire track. This is something even more bizarre. These are thousands of holes in the ground that could fit a space hopper. There are so many that they stretch in several rows along the mountainside. If you stand next to the first pit, you won't be able to see the last one in the distance. This place is called the Band of Holes, and for decades, scientists couldn't figure out what it was. However, it now seems that the mystery has been solved. It's unlikely that you'll be able to guess what it is, but there are some theories for you. A trail of small excavated holes about 1 mile long was created by an extraterrestrial civilization to communicate with space. These holes were dug by ancient peoples to collect water during the rain. A large country used these holes to collect taxes. In the past, geologists made these holes to collect condensation from the fog. Farmers dug those pits to grow crops there. Perhaps these are small trenches for people to sit in and defend themselves during enemy attacks. Or maybe they're graves. The mysterious trail is very similar to a geoglyph. Geoglyphs are giant patterns on the ground that can be seen from a great height. These patterns are created by removing the topsoil. Then workers place stones or plant trees on the bare land. So the Band of Holes is probably a geoglyph, but it's quite strange. It's not a pattern or a drawing, but just a straight line running through a mountainous area. So, what are your assumptions? Let's take a closer look at this thing. For the first time, this band of holes was noticed by aerial photographer Robert Shippey in 1931. So these pits have been there for quite some time. There are about 5,000 to 6,000 of them here. Some of them are dug into ground mounds, while others are in stone formations. This means that the creators didn't care about the quality of the soil. So, these pits were hardly used for growing crops. If these were graves, scientists would have found human remains there. but there was nothing like that. Besides, these pits are not deep enough to be graves. We've got to discard the idea that this road was made by inhabitants of another planet because, come on, that's just not serious. Then, what is it? A defensive line or markers for travelers? If people had fired arrows from these holes or stored ammunition there, there would surely be traces left, right? But there's nothing like that there. Nothing that would indicate conflicts and battles. But surely, there was something else there. Any artifacts? Oh yes. Scientists have found traces of corn and wild plants that were used to weave baskets. So they kept baskets with corn here? No, rather they arranged pits with these plants and then placed corn and other goods in them. Then it's something like a show window. That is, hundreds of people came here, dug holes, and put their goods inside. Thousands of other people passed by and chose what to buy. What if it's an ancient supermarket or shopping mall, and these pits were shelves? Right now, we are much closer to solving this mystery. Yes, people dug those pits in order to put goods inside and measure them. 1 pit of corn, 1 pit of cotton, 1 pit of hot pepper. It was something like a measurement system instead of pounds, but they didn't do it for trading. To fully understand what was happening here, we need to determine exactly where this market was located, in which country it was built, and who lived there. Near the Band of Holes, archaeologists have also discovered the remains of warehouses in the Inca civilization. There were pieces of pottery that indicated the period around the 15th century. It was during this period that the Inca civilization conquered the Chincha people. They were a pre-Columbian indigenous people living on the southwestern coast of what is now Peru. And in the 15th century, they encountered the Incas. They were an American Indian people who created a gigantic empire even before Columbus discovered America. The Incas inhabited the territories of Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, and Argentina. This civilization was famous for its advanced state structure, as well as for building extensive networks of roads and majestic cities. As an empire, the Inca lasted from the mid-15th to the mid-16th centuries, before getting conquered by the Spanish conquistadors. Okay, the picture is getting clearer. The Incas came to the Chinchi territory and conquered it. But why did they force them to dig these holes? Or did they not force anyone? To answer this question, let's look at what is nearby. Next to the Band of Holes was a large Inca administrative center. And not far from the pits, the Inca built a road leading to it. Negotiations, trade, calculations of profits, and the distribution of food and other goods likely took place at this center. The Incas didn't have money as we understand it. They didn't pay with coins, much less paper notes, but they needed to collect tribute from the conquered peoples. So they came up with a system for exchanging goods. The only problem was how to properly calculate the amount of corn, pumpkin, pepper, and other stuff. They didn't have scales, but they came up with another way. Holes. The Chinchi had to fill the pits with their goods, and then the Incas would collect them, taking them to the administrative center. The pits may have been distributed among individual Chinchi families. Each of them paid the Incas. That's how it happened. The Inca troops, which included guards, accountants, and officials, were traveling toward the administrative center. Along the way, they stopped at the Band of Holes, where people had already laid out their goods. The Incas loaded everything into carts and then took it to their base and counted it there. In a sense, this is what paying taxes looked like about 600 years ago. Okay, you've just found out the answer to one of the most confusing archaeological mysteries. Scientists have spent a lot of time and effort to crack it, but let's look at something else. Something that remains a mystery to the entire archaeological community. Perhaps you can solve the mystery of the Nazca Lines. We don't have to go far from the Band of Holes. The giant geoglyph of the Nazca Lines is also located in Peru, and that's what we've got here. Over 300 geometric shapes, 800 straight lines and 70 images of animals and plants called biomorphs. The sizes of some of these biomorphs are as large as the Empire State Building, and some lines reach up to 30 miles. That is, someone painted such a giant geoglyph that it can be seen from space. But who made this? And the main question is, why? Scientists suggest that this was created by the Nazca people. Their peak and period of prosperity occurred from around 1 to 700 CE, so these lines are definitely over 1,000 years old. They appeared a long time ago, but people were only able to identify the landscape and the drawings after the advent of aviation. Commercial pilots flying over Peru in the 1930s saw the full scale of the geoglyphs for the first time, and since then, people have been trying to figure out their nature. Someone thought the lines had something to do with cartography or astronomy, but this theory didn't catch on because there was no evidence. To solve this mystery, we need to explore the area. The region where the Nazca lines are located is quite hot and dry. The people who lived there needed water since they only got 20 minutes of rain per year. Therefore, many archaeologists have suggested that this geoglyph was associated with rituals to summon rain. It was difficult for people to survive there without moisture. They believed that images of certain mythical creatures could bring rain. Anyway, this theory hasn't been proven yet. Scientists are still wondering. And what do you think? The floor starts quaking like it's alive. Books, mugs, and lamps leap off shelves. Your feet slide, your body sways, and you can barely stay upright. It stops for a second, but then it shakes again and again. More than 1,000 times just in one day. This is not how you imagined your trip to Santorini, but it's the new reality. The Santorini seismic swarm started in January 2025. In less than 1 month, there were, get ready for it, more than 20,000 reported earthquakes. For comparison, most cities on Earth go through one small, barely noticeable quake in a year. It all started with small jolts that residents could feel, but tourists might have mistaken for large trucks driving nearby. But by February, things got serious. A magnitude 5.3 quake struck. It's a moderate strength earthquake, but it was strong enough to rattle homes, break windows and dishes, and terrify the island's population. The Greek authorities declared a state of emergency for Santorini and Amorgos. Thousands of people had to leave their homes. Schools closed, and hotels temporarily evacuated their guests. Santorini is famous for its volcano, the one that blew up in a massive eruption around 1600 BCE and inspired the legend of Atlantis. It's still considered to be active, although there have been no significant eruptions since the 1950s. So it would be logical to blame this monster for all the drama. But nope, these tremors weren't volcanic. Experts said what was happening near Santorini looked like a seismic swarm. It's a series of smaller quakes all happening in the same area. They are happening along faults, which are cracks in the Earth's crust that can suddenly shift when the tension gets too high. Think of the ground like a giant, stressed-out Rubik's Cube. At some point, it twists and snaps somewhere. Near volcanic areas like Santorini, fluids moving underground can sneak into these cracks and make them easier to break. Plus, there's the natural stress from tectonic movements. It's like adding oil to a squeaky, overworked hinge. Suddenly, everything slips. Nobody knows exactly what's coming next. Tracking thousands of tremors isn't easy. Many of them are too small for traditional seismic sensors to pick up. But this time, scientists have their new best friend to help out. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. Thanks to machine learning, researchers can detect patterns in tiny vibrations that humans might miss. This technology has helped a lot to understand the swarm. It lets scientists map which parts of the crust are most active and even predict possible future activity. The AI analysis suggests the quakes aren't random. They seem to be clustered along a fault line near the underwater Colombo volcano. This area has a long history of seismic activity. Even though Colombo hasn't erupted recently, The magma beneath it might be subtly shifting the crust, and it adds tension to the tectonic plates above. It's like a simmering pot. Nothing boils over yet, but the heat is definitely building. The swarm has subsided after a couple of months of constant shaking, but it doesn't mean it's over for good. Even after a lull, another swarm could strike, or a larger quake could happen along the same fault lines. That's why scientists are now studying the data collected from the swarm. If you're thousands of miles away from Santorini and don't have plans to visit, it doesn't mean you're 100% safe from a similar scenario. Seismic swarms like the Greek one happened in the Caribbean, Iceland, and Italy. One of the best documented swarms in history happened in Japan, in a suburb northwest of Tokyo. It was all going on in a town sitting on a seismological observatory, like a secret underground lab for tracking earthquakes. The swarm kicked off in August 1965 with just 3 earthquakes that were so weak nobody could feel them. But things escalated fast, and 3 months later, 100 quakes a day were strong enough for people to feel. On one day, the observatory recorded almost 7,000 quakes. Out of those, 585 were strong enough to actually shake the ground, meaning you could feel a quake roughly every 2.5 minutes. Scientists figured out that the swarm was caused by fluids moving underground, kind of like the Earth's crust, stretching and bubbling. Studying seismic swarms helps scientists predict earthquakes better, understand how Earth's crust moves, and even prepare for future natural disasters globally. For instance, if they can link the patterns of tremors to magma movement or tectonic shifts, they can apply similar models to volcanoes and fault lines in Hawaii, Iceland, or the Pacific Northwest. Santorini is like a living lab where they combine modern tech with traditional knowledge. AI, seismographs, and satellite imaging add to centuries of human observation. The locals who have lived through quakes for generations contribute insights about small tremors, changes in groundwater, and unusual animal behavior. All this helps scientists refine their models. Santorini's swarm has surely grabbed the attention of the whole world, but it's not the only place on Earth with some intense seismic activity. But what makes Santorini unique is its combination of historical volcanoes, underwater fault lines, and the fact that it's a real tourist magnet. The island is not so large, and the effects of even moderate tremors feel stronger and more dramatic than in other regions. In other places, though, even more serious earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic activity are regular news, and the people have learned to live with them. Japan is one of the regions on Earth where earthquakes happen the most because it sits on the edges of 4 tectonic plates. There are around 1,500 of these earthquakes each year that are noticeable. Because of this, the people in Japan have learned to live with earthquakes. There's even a law that sets a rule that buildings in the country should be able to handle earthquakes up to a magnitude of 7 without falling apart. An update 30 years later said that buildings should only have minor damage in such earthquakes and still work as usual. But if an earthquake is even stronger, the law says the building's main job is not to collapse, but to save people's lives. At the most basic level, buildings are made stronger with thicker beams, pillars, and walls so they can handle shaking better. They even construct some buildings on thick layers of padding that separate them from the ground completely, which helps protect them during an earthquake. A skyscraper might sway back and forth a lot and move up to 5 feet, but it won't collapse. On the other side of the Pacific, scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey have studied a dangerous area along the U.S. West Coast. It's called the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Over the past 14,200 years, there have likely been at least 30 big earthquakes in this region. One major quake happened every 500 years on average, but for a long time now, Cascadia has been quiet, and the scientists are getting worried. They think this might be because the area is locked, so the tectonic plates are stuck together and building up a lot of pressure. At some point, a part of the seafloor could suddenly break and move forward by several feet.
The shaking would be just 5 minutes, but it would create a powerful tsunami as the seafloor shifts that would last for 10 hours. If it happens, it's going to be the worst natural disaster in the country's history, according to experts. This could make the hillside slide and crumble and take down roads and bridges. Around 620,000 buildings could be badly damaged or even collapse. Scientists are hoping that thanks to advanced AI tech and local communities, they'll be able to better predict earthquakes like this and the one in Santorini. This could save thousands of lives. And for now, we must not forget that the Earth doesn't take vacations when it comes to seismic activity, even in places where you go on vacation.